There's a specific kind of tiredness that makes you want to delete everything. Not the tired a weekend fixes, the one that arrives at 1 in the morning, phone on your chest, and the thought comes fully formed. What if I just went quiet? What if I deleted the apps, stopped answering, stopped explaining myself to anybody, and went somewhere nobody could watch me while I put myself back together? And then a second thought lands on top of it, almost instantly. That's running away. That's avoidant. That's what cowards do. I want to tell you what that urge actually is, because it isn't cowardice and it isn't a flaw in your character. It's closer to something a photographer already understands. A photograph doesn't appear in daylight. It develops in a sealed room, in the dark, in chemistry, over several long minutes. The image is already on the paper the entire time. It's just latent, invisible, unfixed. And if somebody opens that door early, even for a second, the picture doesn't come out imperfect. It comes out gone. Over the next 20 minutes, I'll show you the experiment proving an audience can drain the fuel out of a goal before you take a single step, the real clinical name for what you're doing when you disappear, and the one question that tells you instantly whether you're developing or just hiding. And stay with me for the part about the safe light, because there's a specific reason your last attempt at going quiet fell apart somewhere around week 6, and it has nothing to do with your discipline.
Welcome back. Let's get started. You've probably been calling this isolating or shutting down. Maybe someone who loves you has called it pushing people away. Those are the household words. There's a better one. In the 1960s, Erik Erikson gave a name to a period of life he argued wasn't a luxury but a requirement. He called it the psychosocial moratorium. A moratorium is a pause on payment. Erikson meant a sanctioned pause on being anybody in particular, a stretch of time where the world stops demanding that you perform a finished identity, so a new one has room to form. He was writing about adolescence, but the mechanism doesn't check your age. Anytime the identity you were running collapses, the job that was your whole personality, the relationship you organized your future around, the version of you your family still describes at dinner, you need a moratorium, and almost nobody is given one. James Marcia later turned Erikson's idea into something you could actually measure. People in moratorium look from the outside like they're doing nothing, drifting, unfocused, uncommitted. On the inside, moratorium is the highest activity identity state there is. More is happening in them than in the confident person who never questioned anything.
So the word isn't isolating. The word is moratorium. You aren't withdrawing from your life, you're withdrawing from being watched while you decide what your life is. Which raises the real question. Why would being watched matter that much? Why does an audience change what you're able to build? Because your brain scores an audience as payment. In 2009, Peter Gollwitzer, with Pascal Sheeran, Verena Michalski, and Andreas Seifert, published a paper in Psychological Science with a title that sounds harmless, When Intentions Go Public. They took students who had a serious personal goal, law students, psychology students, people with real ambitions, and had each of them write that intention down. For half of them, a researcher read the paper and acknowledged it. For the other half, the paper was collected unread. Then everybody was given time to actually work on the goal. The students whose intention had been noticed worked less. And when they were asked how close they felt to becoming the person they wanted to be, they said closer. They'd done less and they felt further along.
Gollwitzer called the thing doing this social reality. The moment another mind registers you as the kind of person who's doing this, some part of you files the identity as delivered. Not the work, the identity. And the identity was what you were hungry for in the first place. Think about what that means physically. Every plan has a certain amount of pressure sitting behind it, the way a sealed bottle has pressure. Telling someone is opening the cap. That hiss you hear is relief, and relief feels wonderful, and relief is precisely the thing that was supposed to push you forward. I'll be straight with you about the research. This doesn't happen every time. Telling one person who'll genuinely hold you to it, who'll actually turn up and check, can help. The damage comes from the version nearly all of us actually do, which is telling people who will only ever notice. So, that's the first crack of light under the door, which brings up something less comfortable. Why do we keep opening it? For some of you, this goes back a long way. If you grew up somewhere your progress was monitored, a parent who wanted the report card before you'd taken your coat off, a house where an achievement wasn't quite real until it had been announced at the table, then you learned something early, and you learned it well. Being seen doing well is the safe state. Being unobserved feels like being unaccounted for. So the second you decide to change something, your hand reaches for your phone before your body reaches for the work. That isn't vanity. That's an old rule, still running perfectly. But I promised I'd tell you when the framework doesn't apply. So here it is. This one isn't only about childhood. There's a version of this that happens to a person with the warmest upbringing on earth. Sally Dickerson and Margaret Kemeny went through 208 laboratory studies of stress and published what they found in 2004. They were hunting for what actually spikes cortisol. It wasn't difficulty, it wasn't effort. Two ingredients did it: a situation you can't control and a situation where you could be judged. They named the second one social evaluative threat. When both were present together, cortisol didn't just climb higher, it stayed up longest afterward. That's human wiring, not a wound, which means that when you're rebuilding the least controllable thing you'll ever attempt and doing it in front of people, you've assembled the exact laboratory condition that produces the largest stress response a human body makes. And Amy Arnstein's work tells you what that stress does next. Under sustained stress signaling, the prefrontal cortex, the part of you that plans and sequences and decides, is the first thing to lose function. Picture the architect being sent home while the security guard takes over the building. The guard is excellent at watching the doors. He can't design anything. So an audience isn't just uncomfortable, an audience takes the architect off your project. Now, we need to pause and clear something up, because everything I've said so far can be used as an excuse. Not every closed door is a dark room. Some of them are just closed doors. There are two completely different things that look identical from the outside, and you can be inside either one without knowing which. The first is developing. The second is hiding. Developing has a subject. There's something on the paper. You went quiet in order to do a specific thing that couldn't survive being watched. And if the door were opened right now, there would be an image in the tray. Half-formed, sure, but there. Developing always has an exposure behind it. You went into the dark after you took the shot. Hiding has no negative in the tank. You went into the dark in order to be in the dark. The silence isn't protecting a process. It's protecting you from finding out whether there is one. And it's brilliantly disguised, because hiding borrows every single sentence developing uses. I'm working on myself. I'm not ready to talk about it. I don't owe anyone an explanation. Every one of those is true. Every one of those is also what a person says when there's nothing on the paper. Here's the part I need you to be honest about. Nobody picks one of these on day one and stays there. You slide. Almost everyone starts out developing. Week 1, you're building. Week 3, you're building. Then a bad week arrives, and for 4 days, you don't do the thing, and the door stays shut anyway, because opening it now would mean admitting you missed 4 days. And right there, the silence quietly stops serving the work and starts covering the gap. That's the slide. It's smooth, it's silent, and there's no alarm fitted to it. Which is why you need the question, out loud, once a week. Not, is this good for me? Ask this instead. Is there anything on the paper, or is it just dark in here? Developing has an output you could show if you had to. Hiding has an explanation for why you can't. Ask it out loud in an empty room every Sunday. The answer arrives before you've finished the sentence, and you'll notice you already knew it. Now let me tell you the thing that unsettles people most about all of this, because it explains why your last attempt collapsed. The last time you tried this, you probably concluded that the problem was you hadn't gone dark enough. So the fix looks obvious. Next time, go darker. Delete the accounts instead of muting them. Tell nobody instead of telling 2 people. Total blackout. That is the single thing that guarantees this fails. Because a dark room is not a black room. There is always a safe light. One dim red bulb at a wavelength the paper can't register. It doesn't touch the image. It is the only reason the photographer can see their own hands. Work in genuine total darkness, and you don't get a pure print. You get somebody stumbling around knocking the trays off the bench. Here's what actually happened around week 6. You removed every real observer, and your brain, which was built to calibrate against other people and has no off switch for it, did what it always does when the signal is cut. It manufactured the signal itself. You started running an imaginary audience. The ex you're certain is doing fine. Your family at that dinner table. The one person from before, sitting in your head watching this, unimpressed. And an imaginary audience is far worse than a real one, for a reason you'll feel immediately. Real people occasionally say something kind, then go home and get busy with their own lives. The imaginary ones never leave, never soften, and are only ever watching your worst hour. So you weren't failing at solitude. You were failing at something that isn't possible. You had taken the crowd in there with you, and then blamed yourself for not being able to concentrate with the crowd in the room. You can't out-discipline that, which is why the answer is never more darkness. It's a safe light. And I want you to see the bill this runs up, because it doesn't only land on you. Dale Larson and Robert Chastain measured something in 1990 they called self-concealment, the active keeping of distressing personal information from everybody. Not privacy, concealment. It predicted higher anxiety and higher depression, and it did it independently of trauma history and of how much social support the person had, which means you can be surrounded by people who love you and still pay the full price, because concealment charges you for the concealing itself. That's the first bill. Here's the second, and it's the one nobody sees coming. There's a friend right now who has messaged you 3 times. They have no story for your silence, so their brain wrote one, and the story it wrote is about them. You'll finish your 6 months. You'll come back the way you always pictured it, quieter, steadier, harder to shake. And the person you most wanted to see it will have stopped trying 8 weeks earlier. You didn't lose them by leaving. You lost them by leaving without a safe light. So how do we actually do this? 4 things. Each one shuts off a mechanism we've already named. Number 1, don't announce the door closing. This discharges Gulwitzer directly. No announcement, no premature payment of the identity. And I don't mean be mysterious, because mysterious is still an announcement. Mysterious is a caption. That black screen reading, taking some time for myself, is the loudest possible way to leave a room. Just evaporate instead. Go quiet on the feed. Leave other people's stories unwatched. And when somebody does ask what you've been up to, have the sentence ready, because you'll invent something worse under pressure. Use this one. Nothing exciting, just keeping my head down for a while. Then ask them a question about themselves. Give that 90 days and the asking dries up on its own. Number 2, don't confuse silence with concealment. Install one safe light. This is the Larson and Chastain fix and the imaginary audience fix at the same time. One person, not a group, not a partner you're managing. One person who is genuinely fine either way. Here is the exact message to send them. I'm going to be quiet for a while. I'm not going to explain what I'm working on, but I'm okay. I'm not in trouble, and I'll message you on the 1st of every month. Once a month, you're not reporting progress, because reporting progress is announcing and we just closed that door.
You're transmitting existence. That's the entire job of a safe light. And it holds the one relationship you are about to lose without ever exposing the print.
Number 3, don't wait until you feel like it. Write the if-then. Motivation is a mood, and moods are not a schedule. Goldwitzer has the other half of this answer because the same researcher who found the trap also found the way through it. In 2006, he and Pashko Sharon pooled 94 independent tests of a technique called an implementation intention. It's one sentence in 2 halves. If this specific situation happens, then I will do this specific thing. Average effect size across all of it, 0.65. In behavioral science, that's a large effect for something that takes 20 seconds to write down. So don't write, get up early and train. Write this. If it's 6 in the morning and I don't want to, then I put my shoes on and do 10 minutes. 10 minutes is the whole promise. It's small enough that refusing it makes no sense and long enough that you usually keep going. The 10 minutes isn't the point. The point is, you've moved the decision out of the moment when you'll be exhausted and into a moment when you're clear. Number 4, don't carry the shame in your chest. Put it somewhere nobody reads. Remember the pressure in that bottle. You've got humiliation in there, and the culture offers you 2 options. Hold it forever or vent it to somebody, which is just announcing in a costume. There's a third one. James Pennebaker spent a career on this, 15 to 20 minutes, 4 days in a row, writing continuously about the thing without stopping to fix the grammar. No audience. Nobody reads it, including you. And people who did it showed measurable improvements afterward. Pennebaker's reading is that it's the organizing that does the work. An event with no words around it stays a threat that never resolves. An event with a sentence around it becomes a memory. Start with this line, exactly. Here's what I'm actually afraid they saw. Then don't lift the pen for 15 minutes. You'll discover the thing you've been carrying is about 4 sentences long, and you've been hauling it for 2 years only because you never once made it hold still. Before you go, I want to say something about the wanting to disappear itself, because I don't think anybody has said it to you. You've spent a great deal of your life managing how you look to people. That isn't shallow and it isn't weakness. That was the job. You did it in rooms where being read correctly genuinely mattered. You got very good at it, and it cost you a constant background effort that nobody ever once thanked you for. And when it all came apart, disappearing was probably the first properly protective thing you'd done for yourself in years. It may be the only thing that carried you through that stretch. That instinct, the one you've been calling cowardice, walked you into the single room where you couldn't be assessed. It was the first door you ever closed on your own behalf. Honor that. And then understand what a dark room is for. Nobody lives in one. It's where the image is fixed so that it can survive daylight, so it can be handled and hung and looked at without dissolving. Because the light is where the rest of it is. Somebody's hand flat on your back. The particular noise a real friend makes when they laugh at something you said. Sitting in a parked car outside your house with the engine off, finishing a song. Food you couldn't taste for a year and can taste again. Being known, actually known, not observed, by 2 or 3 people who don't need the story. You're going to come back. Not with an announcement, not with a post. People will simply notice that something in the way you stand is different, and they won't be able to say what. And the reason they won't be able to say what is that they never saw it happen. That was always the point. Stay in the dark exactly as long as the image needs. Then open the door. 2 things before you go. Leave a comment and make it the honest one. Is yours developing or is yours hiding? 1 word is enough. And if you've already come out the other side of a quiet rebuild, tell me how you got through it. That's the part somebody reading this at 3 in the morning needs far more than anything I've said. Then send this to the person who's gone quiet on you this year, the one who stopped replying, the one whose silence you've been taking personally. It almost certainly wasn't about you. A like helps this reach the people it's for. And subscribe with notifications on so we can keep taking apart the darker mechanics of the mind together. Be patient with yourself this week. The image is already there. It just isn't finished. I'll see you on the other side.